Okay, last week, Marvin Sipple suggested that we suspend briefly our study of Winston Churchill and have a civics lesson related to the 2024 election. Marvin taught civics at Carlsbad High School, and he's interested in seeing how we might do that this year. To prepare for that, I went out and looked to see if there were any videos that did that. And frankly, there aren't. So then I went and looked for high school lesson plans that might help to put together a program for civics in the 2024 election. And all that did was make me awfully glad that I don't have to go to high school again. So that wasn't very helpful. And wanting to avoid any bias, I finally decided to turn to ChatGPT, which claims to be unbiased, and we'll see how that worked out, and to use that to fashion a PowerPoint presentation that might give us a basis for a civil discussion among ourselves. So that's what we'll initiate just now. This year's election process goes beyond contending issues because personalities seem to loom larger than usual and because of fear that there may not be a smooth transfer of power. To try to avoid bias, this presentation is from ChatGPT, though reformatted to allow presentation. It's intended to provide a framework for constructive dialogue, not just to advocate, but also to listen and learn. First, we'll look at coalitions supporting each major candidate. The coalition supporting Kamala Harris is demographically made up of women. Kamala Harris draws significant support from women, especially women of color. Her role as the first female vice president and her advocacy for women's rights resonates strongly with this group. She also appeals to African Americans. As a Black woman and an alumna of an historically Black college and university, Harris has substantial backing within the African American community. Among Latinos and Asian Americans, Harris, with her mixed Jamaican and Indian heritage, also appeals to other communities of color, including Latinos and Asian Americans. Harris tends to attract younger voters who are more accepting of issues like climate change, LGBTQ plus rights, and racial justice. Concerning political ideology, progressives, while some progressives might have reservations about her moderate record as a prosecutor, many still support her due to her advocacy on issues like criminal justice reform, healthcare, and climate action. Moderate Democrats. Harris also appeals to moderate Democrats who appreciate her pragmatic style and her ability to work within the establishment. Harris's support is also strong in urban and suburban areas where the population tends to be more diverse and liberal. Turning to the coalition supporting Donald Trump, demographically, Trump has strong support among white voters, particularly white men without a college degree. This group feels that Trump represents their economic and cultural interests. Older voters also provide significant support. They are often more conservative on issues like immigration and national security. And Trump's appeal is strong in rural areas where his messages of economic populism, nationalism, and anti-elitism resonate. Concerning political ideology, Trump's coalition is dominated by conservative Republicans who support his stances on immigration, deregulation, and tax cuts. Trump has also attracted a significant populist base, including those disillusioned with the political establishment. His rhetoric on, quote, draining the swamp, end quote, and prioritizing American interests over global ones has solidified this support. Many Christian evangelical voters support Trump due to his appointments of conservative judges, his anti-abortion stance, and his defense of religious liberties. Finally, Trump's support is geographically concentrated in rural areas, the South, and parts of the Midwest. He also has strong backing in regions that have experienced economic decline, where voters feel left behind by globalization and demographic changes. What are the key differences between the major candidates? Diversity versus homogeneity. Harris's coalition is more diverse in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender, reflecting the changing demographics of the U.S. Trump's coalition is more homogeneous, particularly dominated by white, rural, and older voters. Harris is more popular in urban and suburban areas, while Trump dominates in rural regions and small towns. Harris's coalition leans more progressive, focusing on issues like social justice, climate change, and healthcare reform. Trump's coalition is more conservative, emphasizing nationalism, traditional values, and deregulation. Contrasting visions for the American future. Harris envisions a more interconnected and cooperative global role for the U.S., while Trump prioritizes national sovereignty and reducing international commitments. Harris's future includes expanding rights and protections for marginalized groups, while Trump's vision centers on preserving traditional values and rolling back progressive changes. Harris focuses on combating climate change and transitioning to green energy, whereas Trump emphasizes energy independence through fossil fuels and reducing environmental regulations. Harris supports an economy that is inclusive and equitable, while Trump emphasizes protectionism and economic nationalism. There are related issues which are frequently overlooked. We focus on two here. One, is the United States a democracy or a republic? Two, is the national debt becoming unmanageable? First, is the United States a democracy or a republic? A republic is a form of government in which the country is considered a public matter, from the Latin res publica, and the head of state and other officials are representatives of the people. In a republic, the power of the government is limited by laws and often by a constitution, which protects individual rights and liberties. The United States is a republic because it has a system of government where officials are elected to represent the people. The U.S. Constitution establishes the framework of government and limits the powers of the government, ensuring that the rights of individuals are protected. This structure is often referred to as a constitutional republic. Democracy is a broader concept that refers to a system of government where power is vested in the people, either directly or through elected representatives. The term comes from the Greek words demos, meaning people, and katos, power or rule, meaning rule by the people. The United States is a democracy because the government is based on the principle of popular sovereignty, where citizens have the power to elect their leaders and influence government policy through voting. The U.S. operates as a representative democracy, meaning that the people elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf rather than making decisions directly through a direct democracy. Key differences. In a direct democracy, all citizens participate directly in decision making. In a representative democracy, citizens elect representatives to make decisions for them. The U.S. is a representative democracy as citizens elect officials at local, state, and federal levels. A republic emphasizes the rule of law and the protection of individual rights, often through a constitution, while a democracy focuses on majority rule. A republic ensures that even the majority is bound by laws that protect minority rights. Constitutional safeguards. In a republic like the U.S., the Constitution is a key element that limits the powers of government and ensures that certain fundamental rights are protected regardless of the will of the majority. Is the national debt becoming unmanageable? First, there is the debt to gross domestic product ratio. Currently, the U.S. debt to GDP ratio is a critical metric in assessing the sustainability of the national debt. As of 2024, this ratio is above 120%, which is historically high. While high, this ratio is still manageable as long as the economy grows at a reasonable rate and interest rates remain low. Economists generally consider a debt to GDP ratio above 100% as a red flag, though there is no strict threshold. If the ratio continues to climb without corresponding economic growth, it could signal that the deficit is becoming unmanageable. Interest rates. The cost of servicing the national debt is influenced by interest rates. For years, low interest rates have kept the cost of borrowing low, allowing the U.S. to manage high levels of debt. If interest rates rise significantly, the cost of servicing the debt could balloon, making it more difficult for the government to manage its finances without drastic spending cuts or tax increases. Economic growth. As long as the U.S. economy continues to grow, the government can manage a higher level of debt. Economic growth increases tax revenues, which can help offset the deficit. If the economy stagnates or enters a recession, tax revenues could fall, while the demand for government spending increases, worsening the deficit. Political will and policy decisions. The manageability of the deficit depends on the government's willingness to adjust spending and revenue policies. Without significant changes, the deficit could grow to unsustainable levels. Entitlement programs. Programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are major drivers of long-term spending. If reforms are not made to these programs, the deficit could become increasingly difficult to manage. External shocks, unexpected events. Global events such as wars, pandemics, or financial crises can exacerbate the deficit by increasing spending or reducing economic growth. When could the deficit become unmanageable? Short to medium term, 5 to 10 years. If current trends continue without significant fiscal adjustments, the deficit could become increasingly difficult to manage within the next decade. Key indicators would be rising interest rates, sluggish economic growth, and a lack of political action on reforming major spending programs. Long term, 10 or more years. Without intervention, particularly regarding entitlement programs and fiscal policy, the U.S. could face a fiscal crisis in the next 10 to 20 years, where the deficit and debt levels might require drastic austerity measures or result in a loss of investor confidence. Now we can turn to discussion. I should add that what I read was from ChatGPT, so I neither claim to agree with it or disagree with it. I just presented it as it was provided by the ChatGPT artificial intelligence application. Thank you.